The Cave is a novel that I wrote between the ages of 8 and about 11, or possibly 12. 8 and 12, let's say. A complete story, which is about 20,000 words long, so it's actually a novella and not a novel, but I wouldn't have cared then and I don't care now. It's a novel. I'm proud of it, and I'm going to begin reading the entire thing from chapter 1. But first, let's look at the contents page which I made before I even started work on it. The Cave by Mr. X. The Cave by Mr. X. Part 1. Chapter 1. The Curse. Chapter 2. The Duel. Chapter 3. The Helper. Chapter 4. The Stone. Chapter 5. Switch of Fortunality. I just made that word up. Part 2. There's no significance to the parts. I made up this list of contents before I wrote anything past the first 5 chapters, I think. And I hadn't planned any of it at all. I just randomly thought, oh, let's have this. Chapter 6. Chapel of Doom. Chapter 7. The Land of the Fish. Chapter 8. The Valley of the Whites. Chapter 9. The Haunted Forest. Chapter 10. The Windmills of Time. Part 3. Chapter 11. The Mysterious Undergrowth. Chapter 12. Ant. Chapter 13, Scavenger's Revenge. Chapter 14, Scavenger's Revenge. And Chapter 15, My Little Pony. There's actually more than 15 chapters to this epic series, and I think that the My Little Pony reference didn't even actually happen in the end. I had a plan for what that was going to be, but it didn't even happen. So, or maybe it did. We'll find out together as we go through this long and epic, torturous, winding saga that is The Cave. Yeah, it's quite a generic name from coming from someone that's always complaining about things being generic. I'm the king of them all, the most generically named novel imaginable, The Cave. I did notice as well how the part 1 up here is just the number 1, but the rest is the fancy Roman numbers. I like stuff like that. Chapter 1. The Curse. A boy called Jamie was walking along a path in the countryside when he saw a mountain and began to climb it. As he climbed up the mountainside, he saw goats and all sorts. He was at the top when he saw a cave never seen by anyone before. A sign said in thick writing, "Abandon hope, all who enter here." Jamie, unfortunately, and for the sake of the plot, didn't see it and went in. That wasn't an edit of mine, by the way. I didn't put that in later or something. That was child me's sense of humour there. It's exactly what I would do now. It was scary, so he turned and ran. But a door with a skull and crossbones inscribed on it slammed behind him. He ran through this cave as an eerie mist approached him like a banshee howling across the sky. He fell through a trapdoor and grasped the side of the floor for dear life. He looked down and screamed in horror as he heard approaching footsteps. His hands were slipping. He had to let go, and as he fell, all he could think of was what was going to happen to him next in the gloom of this cave. Splash! Jamie had landed in a small pool of water. Clambering out, he caught sight of a corridor which he walked over to examine, but all he could see was spikes glistening in light like a candle burning in the dark cave. The sound of footsteps came again. They were getting closer. He turned and, in the darkness, he saw 2 red eyes staring at him. "Why have I been cursed like this?" whispered Jamie breathlessly as he turned and ran till he came to the spikes. This looked like the end for him. Having lost all hope, he took one leap, and something strange happened. Jamie fell straight through the spikes and ended up on a platform. Luck was on his side. He got up, went through the door, and prepared for the long journey ahead. That is a picture of our hero, Jamie. Jamie MacDonald is his full name, and it doesn't mention it here. Actually, I'm just realising, I don't know if the story ever says his full name, but Jamie MacDonald is his name, and as you can see, he is a fine-looking specimen of a man. Well, a fine-looking 8-year-old boy, 9-year-old boy, that's his age. Oh no, 8, no, he's 8. A fine-looking 8-year-old boy. Even though I started this novel at aged 8 and kept going to 12, but I decided to keep him aged 8 the whole way, because that's how it was. That's how I was when I started it. It seemed appropriate. He's Scottish. He's got a Scottish tartan hat on, and the rest of his clothes are just whatever they are. He's got a neck, which is a real rarity for me. It's very unusual for me to draw a neck, although it wasn't at all unusual for me to just leave the lines in his body there when I drew the arms and stuff. Yeah, Jamie. And I don't know what's going on with his right eye there. I don't know what's going on with his eyes in the first place, but the right eyes, he looks like he's got 2 eyes in the right, whatever. I just realised, looking at this, he's smiling. That's a smile there. Ever since, like, I started looking at these things again, for the last, 15 years, I've interpreted this image a lot differently. I didn't notice that was a smile before. I don't know, I can't remember how I used to see it now. But I didn't notice that smile. I just thought he looked I thought he looked even weirder than he actually does. Well, anyway, enough of this. Enough! Enough! Well, that's chapter 1. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Duel. Jamie ended up at the door opposite to the entrance of the cave. He ran down the stairs and peered down the trapdoor, but he could not see 2 red eyes. The 2 red eyes that he'd seen in the last chapter. Jamie jumped through that floor of fake spikes at the end of the first chapter and walked through a door, and somehow he ended up at the opposite side of that big long corridor that he was in when he entered the cave, but before he fell down that trap door that he fell down. Okay, but he decided to jump back down through the trap door now because that monster wasn't there. I had this all planned out in my mind. I should probably animate this or something, which I was planning to do, but like the top, if you imagine this as a 2D platform game, which is how you should think of it, because that's how my mind was working with this. He came in at the top left of the cave, and there was a big long pathway going to the right, but then there was a trapdoor in the middle of it that went all the way down. And then he fell down there, and then that pair of scary red eyes appeared from the right, so he ran to the left from there, and that's where at the end of the corridor there was that pit of fake spikes. Fell through them, walked through a door on the left, and then somehow ended up off screen. He ended up coming out at the top right of the first corridor again. And then he walked along to the left and jumped down the same platform, jumped down the same trapdoor that he jumped down when he entered the cave, and then we're here. Jamie jumped through the trapdoor and ran in the direction of the corridor where the red eyes had been. He went through an arch-shaped door and, once through, he found Excalibur. He picked it up and proceeded towards the arch, but the metal squared gate shut and almost squashed Jamie's toe. He saw a scanner above his head. Jamie did not realize this, but the scanner was programmed by 2 human males. They had actually used a projector to make the red-eyed monster an optical illusion. Jamie saw the monster going through the gate. Of course, he didn't know the monster was not real, so he stuck the sword in it. Excalibur went straight through the red-eyed devil as Jamie began to panic. But Jamie was clever, and he looked up and saw a revolving coloured screen with a red beam of light shining directly into the beast's eyes. He now knew that someone was trying to scare him. Then Jamie noticed a panel just like the trapdoor he discovered previously. He jumped on it, and this activated a switch which opened it, and he fell through. On the way down, a secret cavern appeared before his eyes, so he grasped the edge of the platform leading to it and went through. At the other end of the cavern, he saw a wall with a switch on it. Jamie, knowing he was not heavy enough to push it down, stood there and tried to conjure up a plan. Chapter 3. The Helper. Jamie went down the rest of the rock face. When he was down, he heard moans and groans. He looked to his right and saw a man sitting on the ground, tied up. Luckily, Jamie still had Excalibur, so he cut the rope, and the old man thanked him. Jamie told the man about the switch, and they both went up to it and stood on it. The wall suddenly crumbled and blew up. Jamie thanked the man, whose name was Peter, then walked through. He heard a ghostly howl behind him. Jamie ignored it and kept on walking, but he heard it again and turned round. There, in front of Jamie's eyes, was Peter. He had turned into a ghost! He had turned into a ghost! Jamie realized the catch. It was Peter Poltergeist! He had tricked Jamie into believing that he was nice. Jamie ran, while Peter was behind him, carrying a scythe. Suddenly, a floorboard turned sideways and, with Peter screaming, tipped him into boiling hot lava. He's a ghost. A key suddenly fell out of his pocket, so Jamie picked it up and wondered what to do. Jamie found the end of the corridor and walked up to the wall and found a padlock. He used the key and the wall opened. He went in and found a control. This is a remote control. I've not made clear. A television remote control. I probably didn't know it was called a remote control back then. On the control. Do you even have remote controls anymore? Or maybe are they all just... You just move your fingers around the air and everything happens. You move your right hand over to the side and suddenly the volume goes up on your Richard Harrison ninja movie. On the control was a rewind button, which Jamie pressed, and he ended up at the place where he'd rescued Peter. Jamie then pressed the forward button, and he saw himself hanging from a trapdoor. He then pressed rewind and stopped behind the trapdoor so that he could jump over it, and he did. This is like the Prince of Persia Sands of Time. I was ahead of my time with this stuff. Well, you know, it's appropriate actually, because I didn't mention this until now for some reason, but this whole, the cave, the imagery of the cave, if you want to get an idea in your mind about what the cave looks like, because I've not done much of a job of trying to explain that in this story, then imagine the cave system in the Super Nintendo ports of Prince of Persia 2. That's what it looked like. Well, the layout of it wasn't the same, but the graphics were the same. All the brown brick walls and and like the lighter brown, yellowy floor and the lava pits and the stuff, and the trapdoors and everything. That's all taken from that. But I was original enough to come up with my own map, I suppose, a map of the place. But that's what the cave looks like. And this room we're in here, actually, while we're on it, if you want to know how my imagination worked, then imagine that we entered it from this whole lava pit room thing. We entered it from the right side of the room, and remember it's a 2D side-scrolling perspective, like a video game, so they entered it from the right, and then walked along the right for a bit in the solid ground, and then it ends up just being a straight, narrow path of plates, of like ground that's not, it's just suspended in mid-air, basically. Suspended in the air, it's a stretch across this chasm with nothing but boiling lava below them. So that's what this room is. It's like a bridge of earth over this lava pit, and like there's no rock beneath the bridge. It's just thin platform. Anyway, so then so where were we? Spikes on the wall as well as the basement. However, Jamie landed on a switch, and the ceiling started to crumble, and the spikes on the wall as well as the ceiling started moving down! The spikes on the wall started moving down. They just started falling to the floor. Jamie ran for it till he came to a wall, but there was a hole in the ceiling, so he stood there, waiting for the spikes to go down, then climbed through the hole. I don't know if I based that on anything. Like, he stood in the middle of this, like, a falling ceiling was coming down on him, so he stood in the one bit that had a hole in the roof so that it would just go through him, you know? I don't know if, I can't think of any games I had at the time that happened in, and I never did see many movies, so I can't think of any movies that happened in either. I don't know, maybe I just made that up. I did have some imagination. I didn't just rip off everything from everything else. Jamie kept thinking about Peter and how he got chained. perhaps the key he had might have been used so he could lock himself up. The key! Jamie had lost it! He wound himself back and watched his sporran, then pressed slow motion, and eventually the key fell. So Jamie picked it up and pressed fast forward to end up on the second floor. Jamie walked along, unaware of the two men getting ready to play another hoax. They were turning their special mirage device to make the statue in the corner look like it was moving. However, Jamie wasn't fooled this time, because he could see the reflection of the men on the statue. He went in the direction of the reflection to reveal their laboratory, so Jamie quietly moved over to the lever saying Mirage. He tugged it and dashed off, while the two men were left with a very scary monster. A very scary monster that's supposed to terrify them, I guess. Even though they're the ones that own this Mirage room, you'd think they would be able to recognise their own illusions, but apparently not. Now, the two men that got mentioned earlier on in Chapter 2, even though they didn't show up at all, that's what writers would be disgusted by nowadays. They probably would be disgusted by it then as well. Writers would be having a hissy fit over this. Writers would be turning their noses up at the cave right here, because what was it called? Show don't tell or something? I don't know what rule it is, but in Chapter 2, when it said that when Jamie was confronting this pair of eyes, big horrible scary eyes, and then the narration just flat out says Jamie didn't know it was an illusion created by two men and there was nothing to be scared of. That's like a million different crimes of writing in one, according to beret-wearing English professors. And we're just carrying that on here. It revealed that the moving statue was just an illusion before Jamie found out it was an illusion. Although, admittedly, it only revealed it literally one sentence before Jamie found it out. But anyway, yeah, people don't like stuff like that. I think it's a bit of a change of pace, honestly. I think it's quite refreshing to see something like that for once. Amidst a sea of stories that are all the same. We're getting some... When you hand stuff to little children and they write stuff that's weird, you laugh at it, but actually, I think what they're doing is original things that aren't constrained by the customs of the industry. Like professional actors or whatever look at children acting and they just laugh their heads off saying, oh, he's not doing this and that. Well, yeah, they're not, because they don't feel the need to do that. You get something fresh. Now, what was I going to say? The two men. I was going to talk about the two men, but we'll do that later. Oh, well, I like how his sporran. Did you notice earlier, Jamie's sporran? He was watching his sporran because he's Scottish and he's got a sporran. If you don't know what a sporran is, it's a hand, but it's basically a purse that's Scottish. It's a purse that Scottish men wear just above their crotch. It covers their crotch, in fact. A bum bag is what... Yeah, a bum bag. It's a bum bag. It's an old-fashioned bum bag. And when I say Scottish men wear them, I mean, obviously, of course, Scottish men don't wear them. What I mean is that the traditional Scottish outfit of a kilt and a sporran and a beret hat thing and all the other stuff that Scots were banned from wearing for centuries. It's on that. Scottish, you're not supposed to wear underpants either in those kilts, rather famously. I don't know whether that's even true or not, though, or if that's an urban legend. They call it going full Scotsman, I think. No, they call it going commando. No, they call it being a Scotsman. The true Scotsman or something. A full Scotsman. Don't know. Whatever. Well, kilts aren't banned now, so you can wear a kilt and not get arrested for it. Maybe that'll change if and when Scotland becomes independent. Maybe there'll be a retaliation against kilts. Oh, my foot shoot is... I'm drunk! Why did it take so long to start this? This is good. Why didn't it take me so long to muster the anything to bother recording the cave? It takes me so long to... I have an idea and then it just takes me so long to bother. But the reason I put this off so long is because I intended to make a full-fledged animation of all this. I intended to completely animate this series, which, you know what, I've said before that I'd never do an animation of something. But you know what, I said that about stuff like Cupcakes 2 and Garfield's What a Man Is, and I ended up switching, changing my tune on those. So let's see what happens. Maybe once I've recorded all the voices for the cave, then I will do an animation. That's pretty likely, actually, knowing me. Well, at least I'll own the rights to this one. Because I own all these characters, they're all mine. Jamie McDonald is mine. You can't use him! You can if you want, I don't care. I like this thing's going to become a critical hit sensation. Sweep the... like, the block office, the box office. Chapter 4. The Stone. The men were alerted by the sound of echoing laughter. They bolted through the door, not knowing that Jamie was waiting for them. Not knowing that this 8-year-old boy is waiting there to stop these middle-aged men in their tracks. When they came through, Jamie tripped them up and asked what was going on. One man said someone called Sponkel was saying an intruder was in the cave. And Jamie said, "But why must the cave be empty?" The men said that Sponkel was planning to use the cave to take control of the world. How can he do that? Jamie asked. Well, said the biggest man, he has a special stone in his lair called Hypno Rock, and if he finds 3 more in this cave, then flicks the switch of fortunality, the whole world will be in total destruction and under his command. If you are going to stop Sponkel, we suggest you find all 3 stones immediately, before Sponkel does, then cut down the power on the fortunality switch. Your first goal is to find Sponkel's lair, then find the 3 stones, and finally, switch off the power, but be careful as you may be warped to the future. Jamie set off. The 2 men have not... Well, first of all, you've seen some shocking things here. Well, that was a big plot dump there, as they call it. I hope you got all that. So, the evil Sponkel, which is where Team Sponkel's name came from, this guy right here, the villain, evil Sponkel is going to take over the world by using these hypno rocks that exist in this mysterious cave. And if he flips some switch in it that's named, if he flips the switch of fortunality, which is a word that I made up, then I think I just hoped it existed, but it didn't. But then again, I guess that's a good like precursor to how these days I just make up words all the time if I think that they deserve to exist. So yeah, it was just me being me. Yeah, in fact, yeah, I did used to invent words back then, like blonge, and bebe blue and stuff, like blonge, and as in maman c'est les blonges. It sounds like a French word, but it's not a French word, it's not a real word at all. Anyway, and it doesn't mean anything either, it doesn't, but anyway, so that's that. The 2 men are... It's mentioned there was a tall one here, but I didn't explain that there's a tall one and a short fat one. There's a tall thin one and a short fat one. And if you want an idea of what they look like, because again I didn't give any kind of description at all, then they both were they were modelled off of the 2 men in this series of British comic strips called Cliffhanger, from a comic called Buster from the 90s. I wonder if there's a picture of that on the internet I could put up here, because that's what the 2 men look like. Also, I'm disappointed that how little personality everyone's got in this story so far. That's not like me at all. Especially the 2 men there. He just gave a... I mean, I had a daft voice on the film, and he had a daft voice, but everything he says is really, just bland. It's like a Golden Sun cutscene. I noticed how apparently I was uncomfortable having the men actually speaking with quotation marks as well at the start. Jamie says, "Why must the cave be empty?" And then the men say, well, then it says, "The man said that Sponkel was doing this." How can he do that? Asked Jamie. And then suddenly the man is talking normally, so I don't know what... Whatever. That's how I did it. Jamie set off, and soon he found Sponkel's lair beside a pile of rocks, and he put a stick there to mark it before going to search for the stones. He came to what looked like a dead end, until he realized there was an eye in the top left-hand corner. Jamie picked up a stick and stabbed the eye with it, and it opened for him, so he went to collect the stones. There! Ugh, it's kind of sick. That's a bit like those eye plates in Ocarina of Time that you hit with the arrows, but this was before Ocarina of Time. I know I wrote this before that. So I don't know what that was based on. Maybe I think Link to the Past had those eye things too. But when he turned round, Sponkel appeared! Jamie threw the stones at him, and he freezed! Jamie knew they were magic, so he carried them to a lava pit, which destroyed Sponkel, because they were his source of life. Jamie approached Sponkel's lair and walked to the switch. So Sponkel is both introduced and killed off within 2 paragraphs. That's got to be a record, surely. The villain first getting mentioned and then getting killed. So yeah, Sponkel's mighty presence that was worth us calling our channel after him. That was Sponkel. And there's a picture of Jamie. There's a picture of Jamie McDonald. Looking even worse drawn now than he was last time. Although he's still got more, he's still got more reasonable proportions and stuff than anything that I've drawn since then. Like, he's got a neck, for one thing. And he's got, like, legs that are separate from his body. His arms are coming out of his shoulders. This is all very advanced stuff for me. But there's Jamie throwing that ball into a fire that doesn't look too bad, but my mother drew the fire, I think. I think I got her to use the Microsoft Paint, the Microsoft Windows 95 Paint special effects to draw that fire there. Well, I mean, it's more than I ever do with Microsoft Paint nowadays. Windows 7 Microsoft Paint. I don't know what I changed there, but okay, I'm not going to save it. Let's get to the final. This is the final chapter of the first arc of the cave. You'll see why I'm saying that soon. Chapter 5. The Switch of Fortunality. As soon as Jamie pressed the switch, then some alarms went on. Circuits came out, and the cave walls closed in, and Jamie saw some writing on the switch. It said, "Activate switch. Wait till cave walls close in, and revisit jar." Some letters were missing, but Jamie had to hurry, so he went to where Peter was dead, and Jamie remembered all he could until he came to the jail. But no one was there, apart from a box and echoing laughter which Jamie recognized. The 2 men said, "Well, what is it, Jamie? Are you going to die or go to the future external world?" The future external world. Jamie had no choice. He had to go, so he jumped into the box and reappeared in a breathable lake. Now Jamie had no intentions of going here, but he clambered ashore and he found Sponkel! Sponkel said, "Oh man, what's Sponkel's voice going to be?" Well, I didn't mention it in the one page that Sponkel was alive in, but Sponkel was... If you want to imagine what Sponkel looks like, if you want to imagine what Sponkel is, then he's Darth Vader. Now, I'd never seen the Star Wars movies even then, but I knew who Darth Vader was, so Sponkel looks exactly like Darth Vader. He just flat out is Darth Vader. I don't remember if he sounds like him either. No, you know what? No, I don't think he was meant to sound like him, but he's meant to look exactly like him. Although Rob told me back in the day that when he read this, he imagined him being a little midget man, I think. Something like that. This tiny little man. I don't know where he got that from exactly, but I guess maybe because that's the only way to explain how Jamie was able to kick him into the lava pool earlier. So what is... Well... Should he... Well, you know what? It's only fitting, I suppose. I don't know what Darth Vader sounds like, though. I still don't know what Darth Vader actually sounds like. Welcome to the dead... Welcome to the dead world, He breathes a lot. I know that Darth Vader breathes. Welcome to the dead world.
Welcome to the dead world, Jamie. Welcome to the dead world, Jamie. You have found your way here. I have been here living many. I have been here living many I have been here living many happy hours, and you will also stay here, unless you can find your way out.
Jamie said, "Well, here's your way out, pal!" And he plunged Sponkel into the lake.
Jamie McDonald!
Sponkel yelled as he appeared and died again in the cave, which was destroyed with closing walls. Jamie walked around wondering what to do until he saw in the lake a book. He picked it up, and on the cover was written, "Welcome to Death World." And so that concludes the first epic saga of the cave. Jamie McDonald was walking up a hill, and there was goats and all sorts, and he came up to the cave summit and found a mysterious cave entrance with a big sign saying, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." But unfortunately, since Jamie was short-sighted, which is something that will never be mentioned again, he didn't notice that sign, and he walked into the cave, in which he found himself falling through trapdoors and getting confronted by terrifying illusions, and having to fight an evil ghost. And after Jamie explores for a while, he finds out that there's two evil men who work for an evil man called Sponkel, who wants to take over the world by hypnotising everybody with these hypno rocks that exist in this cave for some reason. So he's basically got this mining operation going on in this cave, trying to find these hypno rocks with these two men and all this super science equipment that they've got with this laboratory and stuff. He was supposed to have like a screen that showed him the world, and he could take it over with the hypno rocks and stuff. And Jamie, but despite all of and after all the time they've spent down in this cave searching for these rocks, Jamie just finds all three of them at once and chucks them in this lava pool. And then for some reason, because I needed the plot to move on, then because Jamie threw the rocks in the lava, that kills Sponkel because his life is somehow tied to the rocks. Which is also something that will never be explained. Spoilers. And then finally, Jamie presses some switch and the cave starts to collapse in itself. So he uses he presses some other switch that transports him to a mysterious place called Death World, where he can breathe in this lake that he found himself in. The breathable lake was taken from a C.S. Lewis story that I happen to have read like 10 pages of, called The Wizard's Apprentice, I think. It's a prequel to the Narnia stories or something. And it mentioned that there was a breathable lake in that, so I thought, oh, that's interesting, I'll use that here. But you're about to find out exactly why the lake is breathable in my version of the story. And he's gone to Death World. I didn't want to reveal it, but, well, no, I'm not going to. There's something else I could mention about this, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to spoil the epic plot of the cave. I want you to experience all of this for yourselves. So, I'm going to close that off here. These first 5 chapters were all written by me when I was about 8 years old. This was the first stuff I ever wrote for the cave. I wrote all of these. I think I wrote all of this in one day, I think, on a piece of cardboard. I had this big piece of brown cardboard that I was at my grandmother's house one day, and I was as bored as you might have guessed I was. And I thought, I know, I'll write a story. And so I started writing the cave. And I certainly wrote the first couple of chapters. And if I didn't write the rest of this then I certainly wrote it very shortly afterwards. So all of this was written when I was about 8. And then but that wasn't when it got typed into this computer here. I put it on the computer much later, when I was 10. Because I wouldn't have had the computer till I was 10. So I finally typed up this stuff and drew these wonderful illustrations. And then chapter 6 onwards wasn't written until I had the computer, so I would have been 10. Yeah, I didn't start writing the chapter 6 onwards until I actually had a computer. So I would have been 10 years old. Everything from chapter 6 onwards, I was 10 years old. So you might start to notice a bit of a change in tone and stuff. And we'll be getting around to that later. Farewell, everyone.
Part 2, Chapter 6, Chapel of Doom. Jamie threw the book down and, well, he screamed. It was a horrific place. It had been disguised. It was like a grave, a lifeless domain which was spread for miles on end. All that caught Jamie's eye, who was still crying, was a deserted town far north. In a bid to find shelter, Jamie trekked along, trying not to look at the sun's impenetrable gaze.
I stole that. The sun's impenetrable gaze. I stole that little turn of phrase directly for some book we had to read in primary 4 at school or something. Some book we were reading in school when I was 8, 9, and I thought, oh, that sounds good. Hey, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, I thought, oh, that sounds good. I thought, oh, that's a clever thing. I'll just say the exact same thing myself. Jamie discovered that nobody was in the houses, although the repetitive giggling of the 2 men was still heard. Then, suddenly, Jamie noticed a chapel with people inside. Jamie rushed in, and the door to the chapel automatically shut behind him. Then, the most horrible thing that had happened in his life happened. One person turned around to reveal an eyeball-less face with lacerated flesh. Jamie fainted. You might have noticed a difference. You might have noticed a change with Jamie's characterisation all of a sudden. After the first 5 chapters, where he really took stuff in his stride most of the time. In the first paragraph of chapter 6 alone, he's suddenly crying, his eyes out, afraid, and he faints from seeing something horrible. So I don't remember deliberately saying, right, I'm going to make him less brave now, or what, but that's something that crept into the story at this point. And that's something I've made a part of his character. I've made that a significant part of his character in the remake as well, the remake of this novel, which is being written. I'm rewriting The Cave, and I'm going to sell it in shops, and you can buy it. That'll happen one day. But, well, that's not yet. When he awoke, he heard a voice say,
"Well, I shall not show my face, as you will scream. We all were put here by Sponkel, the commander of world domination. He was going to use us to scare away everybody. I thank you for what you have done, but Sponkel's helpers are planning to carry on with the operation themselves. You must find their new energy source at any extreme. We will supply you with the little cannon which is outside." It's not said it outright, but they're zombies. The people in this chapel are zombies. So, the zombie told Jamie that for some reason Jamie is personally responsible for stopping Sponkel's helpers from finding this mysterious new energy source in this deaf world place. Even though Sponkel's dead, the 2 men and anyone else he's got working for him are still at large. So Jamie's got a quest to complete. The little cannon is something that I'll talk about a bit more later. Well, no, I won't, because it's not much to say. That was also stolen from another story, which I thought was funny. Some book at school again at the same time. Maybe the same book, actually, where there were some armies at war and they had this little cannon. They talked about the little cannon. And there was something I thought was funny about this. I imagined this little cannon, this tiny little cannon. This is called the little cannon. That's supposed to, that they'd fire it and it would be like a cannonball the size of a marble would come out that would barely go anywhere. That amused me. I remember thinking of an idea at that same time of writing a story about a bunch of babies that are at war. A war between 2 armies, but they're all babies.
Like I think I was imagining a story where the whole world was run by babies. And so babies were in the positions of power and everything, and they had the little baby cannon. Well, I did end up writing that. I did end up writing a really short story of that in my short story collection book, which is for sale in a shop near you now. I don't want to turn this stupid thing into an advertisement for books. But that's the story of the little cannon.
Jamie got out of the basket he lay in and proceeded towards the exit. His eye could not help noticing the pictures of people with the eyes cut out.
That was from THERR Enigma. One of the dungeons in THERR Enigma. I was trying to just plonk in a bunch of stuff I thought was creepy. And there's one of them. Much like with most things children write, there was no meaning to that. There's no significance to that. Pictures of people with their eyes cut out that I had planned. Well, I suppose they did say that the zombie had an eyeballless face, so whatever. Maybe I did. Whatever. I don't think I was thinking about what that meant. I don't think I was thinking that was supposed to have any significance at all. I just thought, oh, THERR Enigma, scary eyeball, no faces. Put pictures of that in.
The little cannon waited outside, and a shiver flew down Jamie's spine. He turned back to the chapel and heard footsteps. In this world, sounds were carried everywhere, so the footsteps could have been coming from anywhere.
I notice I've put a space in between everywhere and anywhere. Well, I found out at some point you don't have to do that. Well, I guess that's how it would make sense to write it when you think about it. Anywhere, everywhere. But for some reason it's just one word now. Everywhere, even though it really should be two different words. But whatever. Child me was more correct than grammar. That's what I'm learning from this.
Jamie had not known this, of course, as the two men were keeping it under wraps, so he just rushed inside. Then he heard the footsteps again. Jamie climbed up the stairs.
So in Death World, because the world is dead, sort of, kind of, it's a world of death, then a lot of stuff is like as if it was dead. And one of the things is that sound just carries everywhere. Like you can hear sounds from very, very far away because the world's dead. I don't know if that doesn't really make any sense, but it seemed like it made sense to me as a child. There's no life. There's not something happening one place where it's not just happening everywhere. Like you just hear sounds everywhere. I don't know. I feel like it made some sense in my mind at the time, but when I think about it, it probably doesn't.
Jamie climbed up the stairs and found himself at the top of a lighthouse in the middle of an island. Jamie climbed furiously down the steps again, but he was now standing on a mountain on the island. Then he heard a crackle coming from the two men, who hadn't realized they were on air. They said, "Curses!"
"Quick," they whispered. "Deploy the scavenger and send it to protect the great sulfur."
Now this was far too much for poor Jamie, who didn't know what a scavenger was, nor did he know what a sulfur was. But between you and me, it's really a type of diamond.
I think what a sulfur really is nothing at all. Well, alright. In this story, a sulfur, spelled S-U-L-P-H-E-R, is a diamond. I've heard of sulfuric acid, so sulfur is obviously some sort of substance, but I don't think it's got anything to do with diamonds.
Now, Jamie hopped off and found a contraption which looked like an aeroplane. I don't know how this made him remember about the book he had found at the lake, but it did.
Yeah, remember that? He picked up a book at the lake that said, "Welcome to Death World."
Now, Jamie hopped off and found a contraption which looked like an aeroplane. I don't know how this made him remember about the book he had found in the lake, but it did. He pulled it out and once again heard the two men say,
"Right, Jamie McDonald, let's see you worm your way out of this one. Deploy Ultimate Scavenger!"
The ground started to shake and kept shaking until Jamie was flung off the mountain and onto the beach where he fell unconscious. To make matters worse, the book was still on the island. By now, a big mechanical dinosaur-type thing rose from the ground. Then suddenly the sea became alive and threw itself onto the robot, making it slower
It was just about to eat Jamie when he woke up and rolled away. It chased him all over the island and back up the tower. Suddenly, Jamie heard the zombies say,
"Use the little cannon, Jamie."
And as if by magic, it appeared in front of him. Jamie shot at the beast, but it didn't do anything, and by now the thing was standing right beside him. Jamie grabbed the book and sped for the flying machine, but the thing punched the ground, causing the book to be flung into his grasp. Jamie was now flying high up, but the beast grew wings and flew up too. It spat out fireballs, and Jamie dodged them. Then he shot missiles at it. It hit the beast and caused the book to be thrown to Jamie, but by now the beast was trying to ram Jamie out of the sky. Jamie read the book and found a spell with magic in it. Jamie read out the spell, and a laser appeared in his hands. Jamie read out the spell, and a laser appeared in his hands. Jamie threw it at the scavenger, causing it injury, but it wasn't finished. It too read out the spell, but Jamie threw Excalibur at him,
Which existed again. Excalibur, which has suddenly come back after not being mentioned at all for 5 chapters.
and the beast fell to the ground. But the laser hit Jamie, and he too fell.
Well, we've quite a lot has happened here then. So Jamie came to Deathworld and found a deserted town with a chapel in it with a bunch of zombies that are helpful zombies, they're nice zombies. They told him to take this little cannon and go and climb up to the top of the chapel, and he ended up on a mountain in the middle of the island with a lighthouse on top of it. And then there was a flying machine that he got in, but then Scavenger, the evil robot dinosaur skeleton, who was shamelessly based on Flamasaurus Rex from Final Fantasy Mystic Quest on the Super Nintendo. So that's what, if you want to imagine what Scavenger looks like, then just go and look at the first boss of that game, Flamasaurus Rex. Flamesaurus Rex. It's always Flamasaurus to me. That's what he looks like. He looks like a more rusted version of him, because he's rusty and metal and robot. His name's Scavenger. They've danced about that a little bit with how they've addressed him in this thing. It called him the Ultimate Scavenger at one point and stuff, but his name is Scavenger. So Scavenger battled Jamie in the sky with Jamie's book that he found in the lake that had magic spells in it that let him create a ball, that let him create a laser in his hands and fire it at Scavenger, and they both got beaten. They both fell from the sky, and that's the battle ended that way. So it's a cliffhanger ending. What happened to Jamie? Did he die? Is he dead? Is that the... Well, he's in Deathworld, so it would be appropriate, wouldn't it? That's interesting though, isn't it? In Deathworld, sound carries massive long distances, which is why he's able to hear the two men laughing. Just their cackling laughs. So they're somewhere out there. They survived the cave caving in somehow. They're in Deathworld. Well, I say that, maybe they died. So they managed to get to Deathworld here. It seems as though this Sponkel, who died within one paragraph of him first appearing, or within one paragraph of even getting mentioned for the first time, I think. It seems as though he's had this mysterious operation. Remember, and Sponkel wanted to take over the world with Hypno-Rock that he was mining in the cave. It seems that somehow he's also got some weird stuff. He's also got some sort of operation going on in this mysterious Deathworld, which is somehow connected to the cave. He had a teleporter to get there. And that lake transports people between the Deathworld and the cave. What could that be all about? Who knows? I'll have to stay tuned to find out the answer to these gripping questions. I've discovered in recent years that there was a book with a place called Deathworld. There's a book called the Deathworld series or something, and I was annoyed when I found that out, because I invented Deathworld. That was my creation. I didn't rip Deathworld off of anything, despite ripping most of the things off in this story so far. Well, that's not true. No, actually, most of the stuff is not. I took inspiration from video games for what I imagined in my head when I thought of the characters, but mostly this has been a pretty rip-off free story. There's been a lot of stuff drawn from other things, but none of it is really obvious. You wouldn't guess unless I told you. Anyway. So all in all, Chapter 6 holds up. I liked that chapter. I think this is where the cave starts to get decent. If you hated the first 5 chapters, you'll probably still hate the rest of them, but the cave starts to get better from here on. It's got a bit more personality, I think. I started putting a bit more character into the writing.
Chapter 7. the land of the fish. Splash! Jamie was saved. He had fallen into the ocean a long way off from that savage island. Scavenger had been critically injured, but had succeeded in stealing the book from Jamie and protecting this green sulfur.
The green diamond.
These thoughts of what Scavenger was going to do with the book constantly swept through Jamie's mind.
Constantly, like, in the last 2 seconds.
It was at that exact moment that Jamie heard a voice. It said,
Jamie, get the green sulfur at any cost. Scavenger had hidden it somewhere on the island, but you failed to get it. You have another chance as Scavenger is being repaired. But you must find it before he is repaired, because he has your spell book, and you will be no match for him in your weakened state.
All of a sudden, the waves started to roll and boom and crash. They got louder and louder and louder. Jamie swam as fast as he could towards the island, but the current, as well as the waves, was forcing him backwards. He was swimming so fast that his arms and legs nearly came off. He was starting to break through the grip that the strong current held on him, and was just about safe when a whirlpool came up and swallowed Jamie in seconds. Unfortunately, Jamie hadn't taken a breath when he was pulled down, so this minimized his chance of survival. Then Jamie realized something. He was no longer moving down into the ocean. Jamie thought he had gone to heaven. He laughed and opened his eyes. Only the view that his eyes were open to was dazzling and almost as beautiful as that place beyond the clouds. He had opened his eyes to a beautiful underwater world with great decaying pillars holding up the greatest of buildings. Fish were swimming everywhere. Jamie looked, and big cities and fairgrounds and even castles were incredibly common in this place. After he saw all this, he took a breath which made him realize that this was either a miracle or one of the two men's evil tricks. Although Jamie was more familiar with it being a hoax, he still took the possibility that it was a miracle, and fortunately for Jamie, it was. He entered one of the buildings, which was a library, and guess which book he got? A history of the sulphurs, of course.
Of course you could have guessed that.
Jamie noticed that one fish was gazing at his book in awe. He swam away, had a talk with his friends, and brought practically the whole city back with him, including a policeman.
Hello. Are you Jamie McDonald?
The policeman asked curiously.
Why, yes. I haven't done anything wrong, have I?
Jamie asked, trembling. No one listened to him, but when he told them his name, they gasped.
Oh, you poor boy! You've been through a lot trying to save us! We must help you! The least we can do is give you our sacred cane, which has been passed down from all the fish in Deathland, and finally placed in the big maze hidden under the coral reef. No one has touched it, as we waited for a true hero who could save us and the whole of your world.
A coral was opened up, and Jamie started his mission in the maze.
Things really jump from one thing to another in this story. We're just, here's this, here's that, here's those. We're going there, oh, that's happening, this exists, these things are there, and those are these. I hope you're keeping up with this. I don't know what Jamie's done to save the fish either. I don't remember what I was thinking.
First, Jamie seemed to be at the landing of a house. A dark room was way down below him. Jamie couldn't imagine how he had faced the cave, since he was scared of the dark. He crept nervously down the steps as the wind turned into a howling banshee, just like what had happened when Jamie first entered the cave.
I didn't bring this up the first time that came up, but in the first chapter I said that the wind was like a howling banshee across the sky or something. I was really proud of that thing. I was really proud of saying that. I thought that was really clever. It was so clever that years later I remember using it in other stories for school and thinking like it was such. I thought it was like the best piece of writing I'd ever made, and I would just use it in stuff over and over again. I thought that would be a good idea. It's funny looking back on that. And yeah, it's so good that I used it again later in the same story, and so like a Tom and Jerry crossover fan fiction with the American Dennis the Menace. I've used the exact same thing again, but I've said that I did it, so it's okay.
Every sound and creak seemed like something was following him, and even the shadows glared over him and cackled hideously. This stairway was the scariest of any he had encountered before. Jamie clutched the ghostly white banister with a fierce grip and swung himself over to peer around it. He saw the kitchen. The light wasn't on, but Jamie could see a kind of eerie torchlight flash hovering over the cooker, and torchlights do look very scary at night when you're all alone and you don't know what's causing it. Then Jamie tiptoed down the stairs, but this just made them creak. Jamie got to the bottom of the stairs after what had seemed like half an hour. He silently crept into the kitchen and saw the light. What he couldn't see was where it was coming from. There was just a big lump of darkness where there should have been light. Jamie reached into the cutlery drawer and pulled out a torch from there.
The torch that was in the cutlery drawer. What strange preferences do people in this house have for where to put your stuff? Alright.
Then he spent another couple of hours in there looking for the light source. He gave up and was just about to leave the kitchen when he noticed that the light was gone. Meanwhile, the fish were just living through their typical life, and their normal conversations were buzzing. By this time, Jamie had kicked down the door to the dining room and shone his torch everywhere. There was a big table with piles of Jamie's favourite food, macaroni! He jumped up onto the table and chomped the whole lot down greedily. He ate every plateful since he was so hungry. When he had finished this meal, or meals, maybe I should say, Jamie started to feel very strange indeed. He slowly started to close his eyes and fell unconscious. When he woke up, he started to feel funny again, and then realized he was being dragged up. Jamie suddenly got thrown to the ground, and realized he could only move a meter every minute, since he had been turned into a tortoise! Immediately after this transformation, a door appeared in front of him, with a sign reading, "Second part of May's installation." Jamie trotted in, and was turned into a cat! Well, that didn't last long. The tortoise didn't last long. This was more or less a proper maze, as Jamie was in a purple maze with a big green light shining in the middle. That green light may well have been the green sulphur, which reminded Jamie about Scavenger and that spell book that he stole. What was he going to do with it? As a cat, Jamie sped through the maze, but kept on going round in circles. When he managed to get back on the right course, he just kept going round in circles. Jamie was in the middle of the maze when a ferocious 10-foot, absolutely outstanding lion crossed his path. Thankfully for Jamie, it didn't pay the slightest bit of attention to the cat. It just walked through a corridor of the maze. Of course, this made Jamie realize that he had had a good meal elsewhere in the maze. Jamie, now realizing that there were more dangers than not in this maze, got closer to this peculiar sulphur, and was in reach distance, and It was when he was in reaching distance that he realized it wasn't a sulphur, it was another door. Jamie was just about to walk through when he himself turned into a lion. Now, if you are interested in lions, like Jamie, you will know that they are not too pleased about others being in their territory. Jamie darted through the door and appeared in a boxing ring. Up above, a sign said, "Beat the Guardian of the maze and get a prize!" Now, funnily enough, there was the lion who must have eaten the losers in the ring. No wonder he wasn't hungry. But he looks like he is now.
Switching tenses there. Spices things up.
It pounced at Jamie, and he pounced at it back. The lion, who was not used to people being brave enough to attack it, roared to try and scare Jamie, but he failed.
Jamie can't decide whether he's a complete coward or brave in this story.
Since Jamie too was now a lion, it quivered and shaked and started to cry. Jamie felt very sorry for the lion and tried to make out he was scared. All the same, the lion awarded Jamie with the cane which would beat Scavenger. He arrived back at the City of Fish, who cheered him. They were so happy since Jamie was going to save them from the world they had been imprisoned in.
We're being told there's stuff like that being said here. They were happy that Jamie was going to save them from the world they had been imprisoned in, but we've not been explained how they've been imprisoned here. What? I guess Sponkel must have somehow trapped these fish people in the deaf world somehow, for some reason. And they said earlier that Jamie saved them, so they must know that Jamie's trying to get the green sulphur that's to stop Sponkel's evil plans, even though Sponkel's dead.
Jamie was told that the cane was made by their ancestors centuries ago. Sponkel was new to the business, since soldiers had been working on taking over the world way before then. All the things he had seen here were created by the secret Romans.
Now that's the secret Romans. Now, yeah, the fish world. This land under the ocean of the fish is meant to look like ancient Roman architecture, which is something that I didn't mention at all in the story, but it's meant to look like Roman pillars and ruins and stuff, shrines and things, you know, ancient Romans. And like the world of Death World was discovered somehow by the Romans. The ancient Romans discovered the cave, I guess, and also Death World. And they were planning to take over the world too somehow. But spoilers, but this is the last time this is ever going to get brought up again.
The Zombinis Jamie met earlier,
That's the zombies from earlier.
were imprisoned to work here,
Yes, they told me.
replied Jamie.
Well, there is much more to be told,
Replied the fish. So Jamie was fitted into a transporter and was zapped back onto the island.
That's the island from the chapter 6, the Chapel of Doom. Chapel of Doom was there.
Surprise, surprise! Scavenger was there!
And the chapter ends. Now, what was it that I didn't mention? I wanted to say. So Jamie got the cane from the fish people to help him defeat Scavenger and find the green sulphur get the green sulphur back from Scavenger. The zombies, who are now called the Zombinis, I've told them about. The Zombinis were based on Zombinis were named after the characters from a computer game called the Zoombinis, from the Logical Journey of the Zoombinis. An educational game called the Logical Journey of the Zoombinis. It's interesting how it's kind of interesting to me now that looking back at this, how Jamie is generally tends to be a bit of a coward from this point on in the story, and yeah, a lot of the stuff's based on me. He's based on me to a lot of it. A lot of the stuff about Jamie's based on me, like his favourite food being macaroni. There's elements about Jamie's character that are based on me, like his favourite food being macaroni. That was how I felt at the time. I loved macaroni. His fear of zombies came from me. I had a special fear of zombies as a child. I was really afraid of zombies. They were my most scary monster to me, zombies. I thought there was something really scary about zombies. House of the Dead zombies specifically, because I was terrified of House of the Dead at the time, the arcade game. That thing scared me senseless. And of course now it's really laughable with the voice acting and stuff, but I was actually scared of it back then. Now, anyway, Jamie is scared of most things. Jamie is a scaredy cat, but most children especially, when they write a story with the main character, and the main character is based on themselves, they're usually really heroic and brave and they do everything correctly. They're a Mary Sue, that's what the internet calls it. Mary Sue, they're just perfect, and everything about them is good and there's nothing wrong with anything they do. But Jamie is a bit of a klutz from this point on. He's certainly not a brave, courageous hero. We'll be seeing more of that later. He's certainly not a brave, courageous hero that always succeeds at everything he does. Which is what he kind of he sort of was that in the first 5 chapters. But he sort of was that in the first 5 chapters. There was nothing. He didn't do anything. He didn't fail in the first 5. In the first 5 chapters, which I wrote on that piece of cardboard, he's much more of a bland character. He just everything he does works. He does what he needs to do, and he's not breaking down in fear or anything like that. But, well, I decided to stop. Well, that changes. That changes now. I don't think I made a conscious effort to start changing stuff like that, part of his character. It just sort of happened. Like most things I do, I didn't plan the cave out. You think I planned this? No. I'm not going to keep I'm not going to keep an illusion going here or anything. This was all just made up as it went along. Especially, but I was pretty bad for this back then, because I see how I keep deciding, later on I keep deciding to give people names, and I decide to have things, to add stuff to the story and think, oh, I know, the Death World is actually this. I add stuff to the story later on that affects stuff that came before. Like, oh, the zombies are actually called the Zombinis, and oh, the fish people, actually the city is the ancient Roman city, and the Romans came to the cave and they tried to take over the world there. Like, I add all this stuff, that the backstory that affects stuff that should have been mentioned earlier, but I don't bother mentioning it earlier. So to make up for that, I just try to explain it now and explain how this was actually the reason for that thing that happened earlier. And often I seem to do this in a way where it implies you should have known this already, but you wouldn't have known it already. Well, at least I'm trying to explain it. At least I'm mentioning it, I suppose. Whatever. I like how random I was even back then, though. All these random turns and twists the story's taken. The boxing ring match against the lion. I still remember in my mind's eye, I have not mentioned it, but I still have a vision in my mind's eye of how this world connected. I know what everything looks like. I know what it was all supposed to look like. I mentioned this in the cave, the first few chapters, so I should have mentioned this here as well. In chapter 6, he starts off with that breathable lake, but all around him is just a big barren desert. It's nothing but just miles of desert and a hot, sweltering sun. And Jamie's got to... the story doesn't really convey it well, but Jamie's got to voyage for miles in the sweltering heat in this massive, sandy, blustering desert. So, like, no wonder he's crying. It's a hard thing, it's harsh. But then he finds that deserted town, which looks like the deserted town from the Terra Enigma zombie Mirage town as well. And then he fights Scavenger on the island. He was in this massive desert, but then suddenly it's an island as well. So there's an island. It's this island with this abandoned town and a mountain and a lighthouse and a chapel in the town in the desert, and there's also just water all around it. Then he falls off the island and gets sucked under the water by a whirlpool, where there's this world of fish and people that live in this ancient Roman-looking architecture town. And then all that stuff happens.